Good morning, everyone. My name is Annie. I'm a Kent County Public Library Public Services librarian, and I am delighted, as always, to welcome you. Today is our third in a series of four Getting Ready to Garden programs. Today, we are talking about design and redesign of garden spaces with the wonderful Sabine Harvey, who is with University of Maryland Extension, Kent County. There is a lot to cover. We are going to jump right into it. So I'm going to turn things right over to Sabine.
Okie dokie. And I have a puppy too. So usually my husband watches her, but he can't today. So let's just hope things are going to go well. And before I start, well, I guess just by the sheer number of people who are attending, it is just rather obvious that this is a topic, that has so many mysteries. Yes. And well, let me get to my presentation. Let me go to share screen. And we will do the slideshow if I can get to my other screen. And my cursor keeps disappearing. There we go. Are we good? Annie? Yeah?
We are good. Yes, perfect.
Okay. So we're going to talk about designing or redesigning a part of your yard. I would say start small, whatever the heck you're going to do. But a plan is a good thing. So let's get going. Yes, this has nothing to do with garden design, but this is kind of what my mind feels like when I'm trying to do anything having to do with design. And I'm sure that's why there are so many people here, because you feel like you are being pulled into 20,000 different directions, right? If this, not that, if that, then there, then should I do this? Should I do that? So that's why I put that ever so confusing flow chart on there, because it is confusing. And just to make you feel better, most people who are sort of well versed in this, it actually takes a degree to do this. And it doesn't take just a degree, but often it takes a graduate degree to actually do garden design. So the fact that this is always a mystery and that there's so many books out there, there's a reason for that. You know, it is a very difficult topic. Hold on a second. Okay, took that away. And the other thing to do is, because we all love plants, right? So what do we do when we think about design? Oh, where does our mind go? Our mind instantly goes to the plants. And it is really hard, but that is something you should not do. Forget about the plants. I know, how sad is that, right? Do not even think about the plants. The first classes I ever took on garden design, I was absolutely stunned, because the people who were teaching these were garden designers, or actually garden, architectural firms and stuff like that. These people knew squat about plants. They had not a concept. They knew absolutely nothing. They knew how to draw a fantastic plan, but they had no idea about the actual plants that would go. So in order for you to think about making some sort of design, first thing to do is get those plants out of your mind. And I hope we can get somewhere in an hour, because I also remember my very first workshop that I did. It was a full day workshop. And by the end, my goodness, I was disappointed, because I had learned squat. So I have no idea what we're going to achieve in an hour, but we're gonna try to do it. So if you're confused, that's okay. And get those plants out of your head. So here's the thing. The first thing you need to do is you need to analyze your site. You need to see what is there. And so one of the best things to do is, and this is what you call kind of like, as you can see, this was for an assignment, and this is kind of like a bubble diagram. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to put things on there that are existing. So obviously your house is existing, right? And there may be a patio or something. The assignment for this particular thing was to make a bubble diagram, and as you can see, they're all bubbles, you know, right? And it had to be asymmetrical, and there had to be sidelines in it, and there had to be an evergreen screen, and there had to be a large open area. And as you can see, so this was my first foray into this. You know, so I kind of did this, and like, where the heck do you go? Well, you'll see in some subsequent things, where would you go for this? What's the purpose? And what are you looking at? So in subsequent drawings, this kind of came out. So the other thing you want to think about is, what the heck do you want to use this particular site for? Like if you have a grassy area, right? If you have people who want to walk around, or you have kids or grandkids, there needs to be an area maybe where you want to play, or whether maybe you want to gather. Maybe there's a really ugly building here, so you want to screen that so you can't see it. Perhaps you want to sit somewhere on your side. Well, then you need a sitting area. And you got to think about, what time of day are you going to be sitting at this sitting area? If you work full time, well, and you're going to come home late at night, right? Or at the end of the day, where do you want this sitting area to be? Do you want this to be still in the sun? Or when the sun is setting, maybe you don't want to be staring into the sun. So maybe then it wouldn't make sense to have a sitting area on the west side of your house, because you're going to forever be staring into your sun. Maybe you want an area you can have breakfast. So you kind of got to think about, is it that you want the various areas of your garden to do, right? You want to extend your living space. There's just a whole bunch. Do you want to be able to have an area where you can gather your entire extended family, or is it just the two of you? So make an inventory of what you have. While you're doing that, you also want to keep in mind, and you maybe want to jot that down on here. Are there areas that are drier? Are there areas that are in the shade? How is the sun moving over this area? Are there areas that are wet? So you want to do a complete inventory of what you have. And, and don't just think about what you have in your particular yard, but you may, like I said, you may want to look beyond, like what's going on beyond your yard here, and why do you need this evergreen screen here, right? So, and then to make it all slightly more complicated, if you design a room, you can go with a particular color palette, you can go with a particular style. Great, you've created it, it's static, it's there. Wouldn't you believe it? A garden is alive, right? So it grows and it looks different at different times of year. So that makes garden design all the more difficult, because it is actually alive. When you do this, when you make this inventory, do this on a regular piece of paper. This will be your base plan, right? And I guess one more thing I need to say is, how will you move through this garden? That's another thing to think about. But this will be your base plan, this whole type of inventory. And then the next thing you would do, once you start thinking about it or thinking about ideas, is you would take tracing paper and you lay this over your base plan, because then you're not messing up your base plan. And then you can go bonkers. It's just tracing paper. You can come up with as many ideas as you can possibly think of and kind of see what it looks like. So, for instance, if you wanted to have a more informal view, you would do, as you can see here, flowing lines, right? Because curved lines are more gentle and they impart a feeling of informality, right? So everything, as you can see, is curved. I didn't have a view here. Well, there's now a vegetable garden, so I do have a view. And here is a borrowed view, you know, because something really pretty is going on beyond my property there. There is one idea that you could do on tracing paper. The other idea, let's make it a little bit more formal. In that case, we're going to go with straight lines, right? And straight lines don't just have to be straight, but they can also be straight like this straight. But this will give you a much better, you know, play with different ideas, play with different, how does it feel? You know, if your house is very informal, you may want to go with an informal garden. And if your house is very formal or modern, you may want to go with a more modern garden. So eventually, if you're going to go really bonkers, you may end up with something like this. Now, this is super detailed, right? But what I do want to point out is, as you can see, there's stuff underneath here. So, you know, tracing paper, yay. And here is a building, and here is a building. So just keep that in mind. It's a good idea. Regular paper, tracing paper, and you can change your mind 20,000 times, and it really isn't gonna cost you anything. So you have your base plan, you have your bubble diagram, then this is more of your bird's eye view. And what I do not necessarily have a picture of is of the side elevation view. But of course, that is really important too, because yeah, you don't want to have like a rancher and then plant an oak that's going to tower over the darn thing, right? So you kind of gotta, it's three-dimensional. So you kind of need to keep that in mind too. You know, how will it grow? Will it be balanced? Will it not overpower my house? I have another example, and this is from the Maryland Master Gardener Handbook. There's actually a chapter on design in there. It's been such a long time that I totally forgotten. Anyway, this is done, you know, by an official company. And as you can see, here is the property with all the property lines. You don't have to go crazy like that. But the important part is, here is the building, right? Site inventory. There is already a deck. And other than that, and there's a driveway, walkway. But other than that, there really is not much going on, right? So you've made your inventory. Then you move on to, here it's called blob design, but it can be bubble design, whatever the heck. Anyway, these are your desires. What do you want this area to do, right? So in this case, cursor is gone again. Well, anyway, you can see there is a entrance area with some flowers to welcome people, right? It's the front of the house. Front of the house always tends to be more formal than the back of the house. There is a casual entertaining area so that you can actually have people over. Here we go. There is an open play area. Maybe you have people over with kids, whatever the heck. You want a vegetable garden too. So you can kind of see, and then of course you can also try to see, how are you going to move through this whole area? You know, how do you get from the deck to the casual entertaining area, to the open area, to your vegetable garden, all that kind of fun stuff. And then here is step number 3. As you can see, there is the formal entry area with some, you know, some landscaping there. The existing trees have actually been removed. You don't need to do that. Work with what you have unless you really want to get rid of things. The entertaining area has now gotten more of a form. It's now a patio attached to the deck. And then there's the turf and your vegetable garden. Now, there's something I want to point out here. So this is the casual entertaining area. And if you think about it, it's a room, right? It's like an outdoor room. And to some extent, that's kind of what you are creating. Think about it. If you're in a particular area in your yard, it's kind of like a room. And there could be real fences, right? There could be, once again, there could be a whole fence around this area. So you can see a wall. However, in case of this, right? Because we always want to, where do we gather when we're at a party? Inside? When we were at parties inside, we gather in the kitchen, right? It's nice and cozy there. The food is there. It's enclosed, and we like to feel safe. So where do you gather when you're outside? Very likely not right smack in the middle of the turf because you feel too exposed. It's way more cozy to be kind of in a room. And as you can see, there's all these plantings around there. So these are kind of like implied walls, if you will, implied partitions. They give us a sense that we are enclosed, that we are safe. They'll probably also provide us with some shade, which is really, really nice. So you kind of want to think about this in terms of rooms, which also makes the design process a lot easier because you can go one room at a time, right? You don't want to do your whole yard or God knows whatever, but it also gives you a sense of like, yeah, I can work on this area because it is an entity in and of and by itself. So just to reiterate, make an inventory, figure out what you want to do with your property, what purpose the various areas of your property have, and make sure that you have noted everything that's there. Do this on tracing paper, and then take another piece of tracing paper and kind of start playing with what that might look like, and think about it in rooms. Break it up into little pieces and you will get somewhere. And I know this is for an entire property, but obviously you can just as easily do this for one area, one flower bed, one, your vegetable garden or your front yard. The process is the same. You still start with an inventory. You then go to your bubble diagram, and then you go to the next step. While you are doing this, one thing to keep on, see here, purpose, and also how do you get from one area to another area. So here's a patio, right, for gathering. It's on the east side of the house, so it's a great place to gather in the evening and have dinner because we're not staring into the sun. We have a brick pathway that goes to the pool area. Didn't want to do mulch, right? Because hello, then you get constantly, if you walk on there on bare feet, you're constantly getting mulch into your pool, and it's also not very pleasant. And then as you can see here, grassy area so that kids, dogs, chickens can run around, and kind of like a flower hedge to, or a shrub, perennials hedge to block, the view from beyond, so that we have some privacy and we don't have to look, nobody has to constantly look at us, and we don't have to constantly look at other people. So, think about how are you going to move through this property? What is the purpose of what you have going on right now? Are we with it so far? I can't see the chat box, so if there is anything, just holler.
We're doing fine. No questions yet. We are all just eagerly taking it in.
Okie dokie. So, well, those are kind of the basic things. And especially if you are starting from scratch or if you're redesigning something, the thing you want to think about is also how does this, like I said, this is on the west side, right? East side. How does the sun move through your property? Super important. And if you want to, take pictures. Take pictures for a while so that you have, because our memory always fails us. And that way you have just, you have a great inventory of what goes on. Okay. So then what kind of style of garden do you want? Do you want something like this? Yay for parents who go to visit friends, right? And take pretty pictures. So as you can see, here are your straight lines, right? Lines are so important in design. And holy moly, does it give you a sense of formality, right? I don't think there is a single, well, except for these guys, but there's essentially nothing here that is curvilinear, right? That is rounded. So this gives a sense of order, formality. Yes, that's essentially what you'll be creating if you're gonna go straight. Here's another example. There's a little bit more curves going on, but still, it's symmetrical. It is straight. Once again, it is, old. It kind of gives that old feeling, this very formal feeling. But maybe you're more into this. And as you can see here, things are rounded and they flow. We don't see any straight lines. Oh, water feature. Always, just for biodiversity of what, and also for tranquility and stuff like that. Water feature is something you may want to throw in there. But as you can see, everything curves. It's kind of a jumble, right? But pretty, if you ask me. And it has a very different feeling than this, right? So kind of figure out what's your style, what would you like? And that's one reason why there are so many different books out there. Because, well, thank heavens, we are not all the same. So everybody has their own style. And as you can see, this is kind of in this way, how you're going to be moving through the garden. And once again, here, straight lines. You're going to move in a straight line through this garden. And here, it's kind of like, a kind of a windy path. Where is this going to take me? Kind of mysterious, what's beyond these shrubs? So that's the other thing you want to think about. How do I get people to move from one part of my yard to the other part of my yard? Is there something interesting that draws the eye, right? And how are they going to get from point A to point B? So very important. It's all important. Well, one way to get people from point A to point B is by creating a focal point. This is a kind of an interesting focal point, but these barrels here, it's a nice place for the eye to rest, right? Because here we're just going in every single direction. What's here? What's here? Nice poppies and God knows whatever. And there's a hedge. There's some, a house over there. But a focal point, it's like your eye gets drawn to it, and that's where your eye will rest. So if you want people to just, take a pause, take a rest, maybe, just get a break, a focal point is definitely something nice to put in your yard. I'm totally guilty of not having focal points. It's just a jumble. But one day I'll have a focal point in my yard. Just, if you're going to go all official, that would be a nice thing to do. So sometimes, as here, a focal point can definitely be something, a shrub or something. However, obviously, that's of fleeting nature because it is not going to bloom the whole season long. However, the chairs that are there, they are going to be there all day long. So in this case, this focal point might kind of be those chairs. And, because they're the only thing that is not a plant. And at the same time, they're also an invitation to sit and rest, which is very nice, and just look and absorb it. So maybe an idea is, if you were to put some chairs in your yard, paint them a fun color so that people can see them, and that they will actually go there and take in the view from that point of your property. So so those are kind of the things in a nutshell to go through when you are thinking about designing. So once you have figured all that out, right? You have your site plan, you have your original plan, and you've started to play, what do I want here? What do I want there? How do I get from point A to point B? What is interesting? Do I need to screen something? What time of day am I going to be there? Like, for instance, if you're only home in the evening, there's no point in making a nice fragrance garden with plants that are fragrant during the day, because you're never going to notice it. Now, thank heavens, there's a whole bunch of plants that are fragrant in the evening. So, right? Stuff like that. So once you have done all of that, then it is time to start thinking about what you might actually want to put in there. And as if you hadn't thought enough yet, of course, this is going to require even more thinking. What you want to do is, just as in the woods, in any natural setting, you want to start thinking from the top to the bottom. For one thing, the canopy, the large trees, right? They are going to take much, much longer to grow than anything else. So that is also an investment. And if you are thinking that you are not going to be in your current house for more than like 5 years, you got to think really long and hard about what you're actually going to plant there. Because if you're going to plant a 3 feet tall tree, yeah, that thing is never going to reach any type of height in the time that you're going to be there. So start from the top. Also, those plants tend to be more expensive, right? So you really want to think long and hard. It's a big investment. What are these trees going to do? And keep in mind the scale of it. Once again, if you have a little rancher, oak tree right next to it, not just a smart idea. You want to go with something smaller. So, and from the canopy down, you are going to move to your understory trees, to shrubs, the herbaceous plants, and then of course, whatever ground covers. And it may be so that where you are planting, there isn't going to be a canopy tree, but whatever it is that you're doing, always start with the stuff that's the biggest and the tallest, because that way you can also, if you put like a large shrub on this side, well, maybe you don't want a large shrub on that side, but maybe you want like 3 smaller shrubs to kind of balance it out, right? So you could take canopy however you want it, right? Just it doesn't really matter all that much. You don't necessarily have to plant a tree, but the lesson here is you start with the big stuff and you move to the smaller stuff. And while you're doing this, you try to keep things to scale and proportion. And one more thing that's very, very important, especially when you are going to plant things in smaller numbers, what you want to do is you want to plant in odd numbers, because if you plant in 2s or 4s, our vision will be split. If you have 2 pillars somewhere, your eyes are like, they're going to go right straight through the middle and they won't stop, and they won't really see those 2 things right there, because that's just how our vision works. However, if you have a 3rd plant there, our eyes will stop and they will linger on whatever the heck is going on there. So once you get to many, right, 9, 11, 13, that really doesn't matter anymore. But in the lower numbers, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, the 5, it does matter. And even numbers tend to split our vision, whereas odd numbers tend to hold our vision. So keep that in mind. Now, the one thing that we haven't even really talked about yet is color. And color, of course, is extraordinarily important once you get down to the nitty gritty. And obviously that depends entirely, well, maybe not entirely. That kind of depends on your preference. So I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the fun color wheel, right? And as you can see here, one thing to keep in mind that I always find very interesting is what they call the complementary colors. So here we have yellow, and the opposite on the color wheel of yellow is purple. So if you want to create a great contrast, right, you would do yellow with purple, and you would do orange with blue. And then, of course, a lot, all the foliage, everything will be green. And the complementary color of green is red. So I never really know. On the one hand, red is really nice. On the other hand, what does red and green make you think of? Christmas, at least in my mind. Yeah, so that is a complementary color that I'm always a little hesitant about, because, well, do I really want to look at Christmas all day, all year long? So, and it's a jarring color. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that our warm colors are yellows, oranges, and reds. Yeah, they make us feel all fuzzy, but also because they are so out there, they come to the forefront. They really scream at you. So on the one hand, that's really nice, things pop. On the other hand, if you have a very small area, might be a side yard or just a flower bed up close, if those colors pop and come to you, the area will actually a lot smaller than it is. It's the same thing inside of your house, right? If you paint a room, got bright red, man, those walls will be coming at you, and not very restful, right? You would not want to paint your bedroom, for instance, red, because, well, you may just be suffering from some insomnia then. Now, our cool colors, right, the blues and the greens, those actually recede. They tend to go away into the background. So if you have a small yard, you may want to stay with the cooler colors just to give it a sense that it's more spacious than it actually is. At the same time, if you have a very large yard and you put a whole bunch of cool colors somewhere in the back corner, chances are you're never going to see them, because not only are they all the way in the back corner, but they have also receded even further away. So those are some things to keep in mind when you're going to be playing around with colors. At least those are the things that I tend to think about. But it is a fact, warm colors, they come screaming at you, and cool colors will recede into the background. Okie dokie. So I have a few examples of some interesting things. So as you can see here, this is a planter. Duh, it's not, because, well, design goes just about everywhere, whether it's a entire yard or whether it is a planter. But I thought this would be a good example just to give you some ideas. As you can see, it is balanced over here, right? One large plant, other large plant, but then they've also made sure to put something that's going to grow a little bit taller in the back so that our vision isn't split. And you can see, play with textures, right? Really bold foliage. On this side, also bold foliage, but slightly different. And then in terms of color, this is the other thing you want to think about. Color isn't just in the flowers, right? It's also in the foliage. So the lilac of the flowers is then repeated in the dark purple of the different plants in this planter. So, I mean, we have a lot of material to work with when we are designing our yards. And so not just the color of the flowers, but because of plant breeding, we now have lots and lots of foliage colors as well. And, you know, variegated foliage is very nice because especially if you're in a dark area, it will brighten the area. So interesting things to think about. This is probably at one of my favorite gardens. This is at Chanticleer. And holy moly, talk about texture, right? Just look at all the incredible things that are going on there, you know. And actually this year in the middle, why do I have such issues finding my cursor? Here we go. This is kale, I think, or maybe even Brussels sprouts. I think it's kale. So you could, you know, have fun with things. Ornamental onions that are sticking out, and then boom, right there, smack, this, it looks like a bromeliad to me. So yeah, look at all this stuff that's going on here. And then some small little grasses as a contrasting feature. Yeah, so once you get down to the nitty gritty, it, you know, there's a lot you can do. So this is what I did. I wish my yard would still look like this. This is 11 years ago. Let me tell you, it doesn't look like this at all anymore because there's much more trees and it's now a shady area and the irises have petered out and it's just a mess. So no, nobody come visit anytime soon. But once again, bold foliage and sort of bold foliage, but very, very different foliage. So I like doing that kind of stuff. And here, to show you, repeating colors, but in different ways, right? So yes, I have the purple of the irises here, which is repeated in a bunch of different plants, but then I also have the yellow of the irises here that is repeated in the blanket flowers, and then in a spirea, and you can't see that, but here is a yellowish false cypress. And as you can see, I've also repeated the purples in the foliage here of the Japanese maple. And there is a shrub back here that is also purple. And I think at some point I had some purplish eucharis in there too. So just to show you, you know, it's not just in the color of the flowers that you want to repeat things. And those purples, I did that on purpose to really draw the eye through the garden so that every time it's like, oh yeah, reminder, purple. Oh, it's in the foliage. Now it's in the flowers. But to get people to move through my yard, once again, it doesn't look like this anymore, sadly. What can I say? So those are just some examples. And then last but not least, before you start digging, especially in a new area, oh, there may be some underground cables, especially these days. So yes, you do want to call Miss Utility if you're going to be digging in an area where you have never ever dug before, because you do not want to get the wrath of the entire neighborhood on you because you cut the internet cable, right? That would not be such a good idea. And there you have it. So I tried to look for resources, and there's just, it's just a jumble. Just like the design process is so complicated. at our extension, at the Master Gardener extension, or the Home and Garden Information Center, there is a webpage about landscaping, and it pretty much has all those points in it, like, make an inventory, use tracing paper, figure out how the sun moves, what's your soil like. So all the things that I just talked about, it just has them very nicely listed there. It also goes through like how to, what you want to use your landscape for. And then of course, the big advice, start small and implement it in phases, because yeah, nothing is more frustrating if you try to do a very large area all at once, because just as with any type of garden, it simply isn't going to work. So that's kind of, I figured there would be a lot of questions today, since this is such a complicated issue. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I had to say. And I know this may be frustrating, because gosh, wouldn't it be nice if we could all become landscape designers in an hour, right? And figure out this whole mysterious topic, when other people, it takes them years and years and years and years to figure out this art. So I guess my biggest lesson is here: make an inventory, use pen and paper, write it down, and then start playing around, and forget about the plants. Just think about what you want this to look like: tall plants, small plants, right? That kind of stuff. A entertainment area, a grassy area, need to shield the view, that kind of stuff. And then slowly but steadily, things will come to you. But at the very beginning, forget about the plants. Because if you do, you will just get bogged down, because we all want this plant, we all want that plant. And then you're going to start designing around the plant, right? You're going to like, oh, but I really want this particular crocosmia. How do I do this? I have the crocosmia, I want to plant it. And then it just becomes a jumble. It's never going to work. So start from the bigger picture and move in, rather than with the plant and move out. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so
We have a
that,
couple oops, we have a couple things in the plant, or in the plant, in the chat.
right, I figured there would be a lot of those. And I really would like for you to ask questions, because I think that will hopefully provide some more insight into the whole design process. So think hard about how folks in your house move around the property, and respect that space. Absolutely. And that is a very good thing, because I was talking about views and like having a borrowed view inside, like from your yard out. However, unless you are like, you are crazy like me and spend a lot of time outside, chances are you're going to be spending a lot of time inside. So not only do you want to think about how does this look from the outside, you also want to think about, what is my view from the inside out, right? And it may be that you particularly like watching birds or something like that. So you want to think about your windows. How do I look onto my property? And obviously you don't want to, block your windows, because then you have no view at all anymore, unless there's really a reason that you wanted to do that. But think about your windows as a nice picture frame, right? What is that picture in that window going to be? What lies beyond? So that in and of itself is already a beautiful frame from which you can start designing. Great point. Absolutely. How do you handle hills? I have a 4-foot severe drop in my yard to a perfect flat space for a vegetable garden. Well, that is a very interesting question. And I guess it depends on, gosh, it depends on so many things. We haven't even talked about budget yet. So, haha. Well, how are you going to move to your vegetable garden? So first of all, figure out from what point are you going to come, right? And then from what point are you going to get to your vegetable garden? And is it practical? I mean, I don't know how far away it is. So do you really want your vegetable garden there? Or is it the only space that you can have a vegetable garden? Do you have water there? There's another thing. And if it takes you like 100 feet to your vegetable garden, maybe that's not a place you want to have your vegetable garden. Can you get around the drop? Can you, once again, it's going to depend. Can you do like what they do on a mountain? Can you have a winding path with some plants down to your vegetable garden? Or do you simply need to create steps to your vegetable garden? Straight down, you know, whatever it is, it needs to be something that for you is safe to navigate. I kind of had the same issue. And it wasn't a severe drop, but it definitely was on a slant. And what I did with some backbreaking work is I actually incorporated the slant into my vegetable garden by making terraced beds. So because we only had so much space, so part of the vegetable garden had to be on the slant. So what I did is I simply created, you know, I have a bed that's higher, a bed that's lower, and then the rest of the beds. But that's how we solve that problem. So it all depends on how much, you know, how large the area is. So, yeah. Well, whatever you do, in terms of starting with any type of plan, and this is not just for like an entire landscape plan. This is even for a like a new vegetable garden or a flower bed or whatever the heck. Small. It is so much easier to start small. You can make a plan, but start small. Always. So, no. So here's a question. When choosing plants for a certain area, is it necessary to choose plants needing same pH or can you amend separately? I would very, very much encourage you to put plants that require the same pH in the same area because, you know, it's not like you can just say, oh, okay, I'm going to create a tiny little swimming pool here of very low pH so I can put my blueberry bush there. And then right next to it, I'm going to grow asparagus that need a pH of 7. That's just not going to work. So if you want to plant things like azaleas and or blueberry bushes or you know, anything that needs a low pH, you also want to think about where do these things grow in nature? Well, they usually grow in areas that have been there longer, maybe some shade, you know. So very rich soil, but with a lower pH. And they tend to be growing together because that's the natural way of doing things. You know, in nature, you don't find a plant that needs a very low pH right smack to a plant that needs a much higher pH. So I would definitely, you know, keep those plants separate and then put them together so that you can figure out a whole area. Obviously, the first thing to do is to do a soil test to actually see what kind of pH you're dealing with, right? Yes, take the guesswork out of it. When you need help actually planting any resources, people, you can contact. Well, we have a million gazillion landscape businesses around here. Some of them will give you a planting, you know, will actually do like a planting plan for free. If there are particular plants that, you know, and most of them are very good. If you say, I need plants for like a sunny side, or I need a shrub or this or that. If it's a good business, they should be able to, to give you some suggestions. And if people have very specific questions, like, I want native plants here, can you give me some? I'm more than happy to give you a bunch of suggestions as well. I'm not going to do a whole design for you, because that would be just a little bit crazy. But especially if you say, I have, east side of my house, wet soil, west side of my house, dry and in the sun, or, just I want to go with natives, or I want to go with this, okay, some ground covers. And on the home and garden information site, there's also a whole bunch of suggestions. So there, and there's many resources out there. So yes, if you have some questions, just send me an email, and I will send you some resources. Gosh, do you really need an overall plan for the entire property at the same time? No, you don't. Especially not if you say, I have this beautiful picture window, I want a planting bed right out there. No, why would you have to do a site plan for the entire property? You really don't. Then you just say, my bed right there, that's going to be my whole plan. You do want to think about a little bit about how it balances out with the rest, but no, you don't need a overall plan for your entire property. You do want to keep in mind like trees or other things that may eventually cast a shade on there. But no, scale it down. If you don't need a plan for your entire property, if you just want a design for around your deck, well, that's going to be your entire plan. And even maybe that you still want to implement into phases. So is there an app where you can keep pictures of your property at different times of day and year and makes notes so it's all in one place? I'm going to refer this one to the library. I have no idea. I mean, I would say probably like Google Photos or something. You can do all kinds of things in Google Photos. Gosh, I always think about organizing my pictures, and I will take pictures of the same place in my yard at different times of year. And then, of course, I never get organized enough. So, there's so many apps out there, and I often am frustrated because I feel like most of the time all these apps, and also these garden design apps and stuff like that, interesting, gimmicky, do they eventually do what I want them to do? No, never. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Annie?
I'd have to look into it. Like you just said, there are so many different apps that will do different things that are unlikely to be exactly what anyone is looking for, but might have elements of what you're looking for. I can certainly take a little time to look into it. And there's a suggestion in the chat that a journal app might be a good
Oh,
alternative. So not looking for a something that is garden specific, but looking for something that is more the concept of what you want to do. Um, yeah, it really depends so much on exactly what your specific goal is, I think.
I think if it were me, what I would do is I would just use something like, put my pictures in Google Photos or Dropbox or whatever the heck. And then I would just simply create folders, say, I would just create folders and give my folders the name of whatever that spot in my yard is, or different spots, and just actually organize the pictures myself and put them in the different folders, so that then I would have all my pictures of my one flower bed or my vegetable garden, whatever the heck, in one spot, and I can just go through the pictures. And the nice thing about like things like Google Photos is, they will they will organize it chronologically. I think you can also tell it to organize it differently, but I think that's just, or albums, I guess they're called. I think that's what I would do. It's also just, I guess, because I'm lazy and because I just don't really want to bother with yet learning another app and creating another password and all that kind of stuff. So I think I would just create albums and put my pictures in there. That would also allow you to, maybe you can put multiple, pictures in multiple albums and all that kind of stuff. Day one, okay, that's apparently a journal app. Day one. I'll have to check this out. Who knew that there were journaling apps?
There's an app for just about anything.
Yes.
A quick search is showing that a lot of the gardening apps are really plant focused. It is more to track specifics of plants or to keep notes on what type of plants you have and what conditions they need and that sort of thing. So I
Right.
think that for organizing the specifics of your garden, I think that a different kind of app might be the best venue. And journaling apps, because they have flexibility in terms of what you can include a lot of times, might be a good start. And I will just say, working in a profession that focuses on information, everyone has such a different personal preference for organization.
Right.
Standards of organization, of course, are a foundation of libraries, but in your personal life, you kind of get to choose. And if you can find a system that works for you, that's going to be your best bet for being able to continue sustained use of it.
Right. Before we had like digital pictures, I just had my printed pictures and I just, put them, well, at least I started, and of course I never finished because then we went digital. Anyway, I put pictures of specific areas of my garden just in one of those picture books where you slide the pictures in, and I could just see them like that. And in many ways, my brain still works that way, right? So I may not be thinking about sleeve pictures, but I still think in terms of like, let's put this in an album. Let's just put it all together so I could just, click straight through it. Um, so that's kind of, but interesting. Any other questions? So it is a difficult topic. And if you're I just saw the library has a bunch of new books on garden design. And to some extent, books on garden design are on the one hand fun, right? I always see them kind of like eye candy because they are written by professionals. And in many ways, they're also very, very frustrating because, you'll get this book or you think, you'll buy this book and it has all these planting plants in and I wouldn't want to say they're cookie cutter, but there is that thing. And it's never going to work for your yard because you're different and your yard is different. And the way that your sun moves over your yard is different. And so really just start with that base plan, that very concept, and then just start playing around. You can find inspiration from all these books, but these people are professionals, and then the gardens that it takes like 100 people to install them. There's just one of us. So those are the, and then the maintenance. Oh my goodness gracious, right? There's something we haven't even talked about. So just keep these things in mind so that you don't get too frustrated. It just needs to be something that you enjoy, not something that is going to appear on the front page of whatever Martha Stewart magazine, because that will just lead to frustration. So just think about creating something that works for you, that functions the way you want it to function, and that you get enjoyment out of it. If you can find inspiration in these books, great. If you can see some interesting plant combinations, or you can just see like some sort of color, fantastic. But yeah, don't get too frustrated. It's very, very, very hard. It's probably the hardest topic in gardening, the design, if you ask me. So start trying to think away from the plants and start thinking about the structure and the bare bone. Don't forget about winter. Put some evergreens in there, because if that's the other thing, right? If you just think about plants, well, guess what? You're going to end up with a whole bunch of pretty plants, because we usually tend to think about this in the summer, right? All perennials. And then you're going to sit there in front of your beautiful picture window, and you're going to stare outside in the winter, and you think, oh my goodness, there's nothing left. Right? So yeah, those are kind of the things to think about. And if you're stumped, if you need some extra guidance, just email me.
And also, Sabine mentioned that the library has some new books on garden design. If anyone is interested, even if you don't quite know what you want or what you would be looking for, please go ahead, give us a call. We have been doing what we're calling book bundles, where you can call, give us a topic of interest, and we will prep 5 or 6 books on that topic that you can then pick up, take a look through. You can be as general as you want, garden design, or get much more specific if you have a small space or a sunny space or whatever your specifics are, and we're happy to do that. So you can just let us know if that would be helpful.
Yep. And that's also why I didn't put any books in there, because it's very, very personal, English cottage garden, native garden, very formal garden, who knows? So
Just a comment.
yes.
I went on to, I get my books online,
Uh-huh.
and the library has several gardening books that you can download through Overdrive or whatever app you use
Right.
to get books. And you can thumb through them and don't have to go to the library. Don't have to put your mask on.
Right. Well, you don't have to put I love going. You actually can't get into the library. Neither would I want to be in the library, just for the safety of the librarians. But just going, and the book bundles, I just got a book bundle. It's a lot of, I still like physical books, especially when it comes to pictures and colors, right? Because on a Kindle or something that might not work. So yeah.
But Connie is right that
Yeah,
for those who want to download, we have Overdrive, and also Hoopla is our other service, and they both have gardening related materials.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
again, you can access it on our website if you're comfortable doing that, or give us a call. We can talk you through the process over the phone, and we're happy to do that at any time.
And those things are definitely very handy in case it's Sunday and it's snowing and you want to book right there and then, because you're going to do yourself some designing, right? Yes. So absolutely. Okay. My email address, well, it's at the end there, but I'll type it in. It's sharvey1@umd.edu. There you go. So is that in there or not?
It
No.
does not appear to have come through, but I can put it
No,
in.
no. Here we go. Somehow, let's see. Harvey1.edu. Let's see. Is it? No, somehow I am.
I put it in. It's all good. We're good
Oh,
to
good.
go.
Somehow it's.
Um,
Thank you.
no worries. Um, So we are a couple minutes over, so I just want to thank everyone for coming today. Thank you, Sabine, as always, for sharing your enthusiasm and your knowledge and your willingness to continue to talk to people on the topic. It is
Yes, well, I think
fantastic.
I must be an idiot for trying to attempt garden design in an hour, but never mind.
Nope, you've given us some very good basics, and that is
So,
how we all start.
yes.
All right. Well, there is
Okay.
one more program in this series. Next week, we will be talking about container gardening and raised beds. If you have not yet been able to register and would like to, I'm going to put the link to our calendar in the chat as well. And I hope that we will see some of you then. In the meantime, happy gardening, happy designing, happy planning, and we will see you soon. Bye bye.
Yes.
Thank you
Bye,
very
everyone.
much. Thanks, Sabine.
You are welcome.